An important point at this meeting was the fact that the delegations of different countries stressed the importance of prioritizing discussions about sanctions removal and also verification and assurances at the 8th round of Vienna talks. Later on, issues related to financial and banking sanctions will be reviewed by joint working groups.
Well, for more on this, I'm joined now by Negar Mortazavi. She's a journalist and host of the Iran podcast. So some momentum on talk of lifting of sanctions on Iran, which is Iran has always said it would require in order to return to compliance. How optimistic are you about a positive result coming out of this latest round of talks?
I'm cautiously optimistic. I was a bit pessimistic in the past few months, especially with the delay of the Biden administration in joining the talks in Vienna, and then also the change of administration in Tehran with a new hardline team. The road ahead looks more complicated and difficult, but now it still seems like both sides are adamant and very much interested in reviving the nuclear deal and in resolving the issue diplomatically. So that's good. But between interest and actual action, there's still a wide gap. I think both sides still have to make more compromises. Their expectations are not close. They need to make more compromises as far as who does what and who goes first, because that has been an issue between Iran and the U.S. for the past few months. So I think they need to make more compromises to be able to meet somewhere halfway for a nuclear agreement. But I'm cautiously optimistic that there's still a chance. Not this year, by the end of this year, of course, but in the next coming year, that we may be able to see diplomacy succeed.
How much urgency, though, is there in reaching an agreement sooner than later? And is it really possible, given the distance between the sides, in reaching some sort of agreement?
Well, there's a lot of urgency. There's a strong sense of urgency on both sides. On the Iranian side, obviously, the U.S. has left the deal since 2018 and imposed crippling sanctions on Iran that has targeted every major industry, has really put pressure on the Iranian economy, and it has doubled with this deadly pandemic that Iranians have been dealing with. So there has been a sense of urgency on the Iranian side for sanctions relief, which is what the United States needs to do. On the U.S. side also, there's a sense of urgency because Iran has expanded its nuclear program, is pushing the limits of what they can do within the realms of a civilian program, and sort of trying to produce more material and escalate the situation from their viewpoint in order to get more leverage at the negotiating table. And the United States wants to reverse those steps, the expansion of the program, as soon as possible. So both sides have this sense of urgency, but then at the same time, they each think they have more leverage and more pressure to exert on the other to meet them at where they are standing as far as their expectations. So that's why, again, going back to your first question, I think they need to make more compromise, considering this sense of urgency on both sides, to be able to meet halfway and resolve this issue diplomatically, because the alternative would be military conflict, which is just not desirable for either Iran or the United States.
And the U.S., of course, is not taking part in these talks because Iran won't meet directly with the U.S. How difficult and frustrating is that in trying to reach an acceptable agreement between the U.S. and Iran when they're not able to meet face-to-face?
Certainly, this is one of the main issues that's been happening in the past few months. And it's also from the Iranian viewpoint. The United States is the one who left the JCPOA, who left the agreement. So right now, it's every other party to the agreement, the P4+1, which is Iran, UK, France, Germany, Russia, and China, and the European Union, who's facilitating meeting in one room, in fact, in one hotel. And then the U.S. delegation, because they're not party to the deal and they haven't joined back the deal, the U.S. negotiators have to meet in a separate hotel, and then there's European diplomats shuffling between the two hotels back and forth, sort of delivering messages, which makes the process not just more delayed, but also more indirect. And I'm sure any diplomat will know about this more than you and I, of how things can get lost in between these messaging and shuffling. So it's become very difficult over the past few months. And it's one of the main issues of pressure that's targeting these intense negotiations, indirect.
Right, it is a challenge for sure. Negar Mortazavi joining us from Washington, D.C. Thank you.